Hey folks, welcome back. It's been a little bit. It's been rather stormy and rather cool. So, and I've got stuff to do. Even if it snows a few inches, even if it snows a few inches, I like to keep everything shoveled out. But this story that I'm about ready to tell is there's two stories that are quite a bit alike, meaning that there was a lot of snow on the ground, and it was in about the same size chopping. And if anybody doesn't know what a chopping is, it's an area where they cut the wood. One followed a small runoff stream, a little runoff, a little wet area, and the other one led to a swamp. So there was a thicket up here that I knew where they had to be bedded down in both instances. And there was, in both instances, there was a old apple orchard that they like to feed on. So I knew they bedded over here, and I knew they fed over here. There was a small chop-in, and the trail went from the thicket where they bedded, through the chop-in, through the wet ground, through an apple orchard, to an apple orchard where they would feed. Both happened in the morning, both happened later in the season, and both happened when there was a pile of snow on the ground. Well, this particular instance, we had days of snow. Well, it started out with rain, then it went to sleet, then it went to heavy sticky snow, and then it turned off really cold, and then it turned to fluffy snow, but it had still been snowing for about 2 days, if I remember correctly. So where it had been wet, and where it had sleeted, and where it had turned to sticky snow, every single branch had about this much snow on it. You could constantly, sitting there, you could constantly hear branches breaking under the weight of the snow. And even getting to that tree stand, it was quite a chore. I like to leave well before legal time. I will make my way to the stand so I don't get sweaty, so I can sit longer. One particular instance, I had to wear snowshoes, and that was about 3/4 of a mile. It wasn't very far from the main road, but I couldn't park along the main road because the snowbanks were so high that year. So instead, I put my snowshoes on and I walked about 3/4 of a mile to my tree stand, taking it nice and slow so I didn't get sweaty. Took my snowshoes off, leaned them up against the base of the tree, climbed to my tree stand, brushed the snow aside, sat there, and I always had a little battery operated clock. I put that to the Velcro on the tree in front of me. I waited till legal season. I carefully, slowly, and quietly loaded what I was using for a bang bang, and I sat there, watched everything continuing to get light, and I knew they were bedded over here, and I knew they were going here to feed, but I knew they also crossed right in front of me in that small chop-in. Were they going to do it that particular day? I didn't know, because there was so much snow on the ground, folks. I mean, there was a pile of snow on the ground. So I sat there, and I'm like, well, they're probably going to continue to bed down because the snow was so deep. And I had thought about leaving that stand early. I said, oh, I'll give it another half hour. I was starting to get a little cool. I said, I'll wait for another half hour. And the next thing I knew, because everything, when the sun had come out and it was starting to warm up, the snowstorm was finally over. The the branches that were weighted down either were breaking under the weight, or the snow would come off them and the branch would spring up. So it was very active all around. And that opening, that chopping, was just big enough to let the sun in. So I sat there and I'm like, okay, I'm going to give myself another 10 minutes. Next thing I knew, I saw this brown coming, and then I didn't see it. And then I saw the brown, and then I didn't see it. But every time I didn't see the brown, I would see a great big splash of snow come up. So I'm like, here we go. So I watched her come through. And it was a doe. It was a 130-pound doe. 130, I think I rounded it to 130, but I think it was like 133. I don't know, but I call it 130. A nice sized doe. And she would leap up and to try to clear the snow, and then she would bounce, and then poof of snow, fluffy snow would fly up in the air, and then you could see her coming up. Her legs were like this. Well, her legs were like this as she was jumping in the air to get another bound. And I'm like, okay, I've only got one shot at this. So I picked my gun up, open sights, and I said, okay, the next bound, when she comes up from disappearing, when she comes up, I'm going to get her right there. Well, I got her right there, right in the front shoulder. And she was continuing to go, but she went down, and she went down into a hole, folks. It was a pretty good dip with all that snow. And she never came up. The snow puffed, and then that was the end of it. So I was watching that, and something caught my eye, because it was a downed cedar, a big cedar. It was a downed cedar, and the next thing I knew, I saw all these horns, and this face, this buck face looking right in my direction. And he stood there, and he was a beautiful, beautiful buck. And he stood there, and I already knew I had tagged out. So I just said, go on, pretty boy. Go on. You got another season to live. Go on, pretty boy. And he took off. He took off. He just leaped away from me. And he was probably, the doe was probably about 35 yards from me, and he was probably about 45 yards from me. And I think he was bedded right there, right at the base of that blowdown throughout the storm. He had snow on his back, and so it was quite a chore getting her out when the hole that she fell in wasn't wet, but it was deep, folks, and we had a lot of snow on the ground. And just finding her, had to dig. She was covered. Where she landed, and the snow came back down on top of her that had splashed out, was at least a foot. She was covered in at least a foot of snow. But it was so pretty, folks. It was so pretty. While I was sitting there, I could hear the branches, like I said, I could hear the branches breaking under the weight of the snow on the limbs. And the sun had come out, and it was hitting that chop in, and it was absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. And on top of that, I got 130 pound doe. I wasn't going to complain. I could get either or. I could either get a doe or I could get a buck. And if I had known the buck was there, I may have waited for him, but I couldn't see him. He was bedded right there when I had walked to my tree stand, climbed my tree stand, made myself comfortable. He was right there. And I'm not sure why she was a hella hooping down through that, other than maybe getting momentum, jumping up from the deep snow, trying to clear the deep snow, landing in the deep snow, going out of sight, and then bounding back up. Maybe that was the only way she could get through that deep snow. I'm not sure. I know she wasn't pressured. I know she wasn't pushed. So that's all I've got for you for that. And it's quite cool. It is, I don't know, about 8 degrees. It's warmer than it has been, folks. It's been brutally cold here. And it's only the beginning of December. So I think if this keeps up, we're going to have a little bit of an old-fashioned Christmas for me. Now, I remember bow hunting one. This is going to be real short. I remember bow hunting once, and it was the end of September, and we had 2 or 3 inches of snow while I was sitting with my bow hunting, and that snow never left until May. So I'm thinking maybe this is gonna be like that type of winter. I'm not really sure. If so, bring it on. I am ready. And that's all I got for you tonight. And you all be good.